Purchasing your first brand new car is always an exciting proposition for any new consumer. Unfortunately, as cars have become more technologically advanced, this is reflected in their very expensive transaction prices, which is why I'm in Miami, Florida with Nissan testing out two of the newest affordable entry-level cars. On my right, the 2020 Nissan Versa, and on my left, the 2019 Nissan Kicks. So the big question I want answered, if you guys have under $20,000 to spend, which one of these two subcompact cars should you buy? The Versa or the Kicks? That's what we're here to find out. So if you guys have followed the channel, you'll know that I actually have a full review on the Versa and the Kicks. Remember, these two cars are new. This one was just launched literally last month, while the Kicks was launched last year. And these two cars are the least expensive vehicles that Nissan makes. Basically, Nissan was targeting Generation Z buyers. This is anybody born after the year 1995. So you have to be 24 years and under to fall under this category. And honestly, when I was around that age, I purchased a 2012 Honda Fit Sport. So this is basically right on my alley in terms of an entry-level car. So the two cars that you're seeing are basically riding on the same platform. One is a sedan while one is a crossover, but let's just call it a hatchback because you can't get all-wheel drive on the Kicks. Now let me first start with the all-new Versa. This is the third generation Versa that I already showed you. It's got a completely different look versus the previous frumpy generation, which just looked hideous from most angles. This to me looks like a baby Maxima, or I'm sorry, a baby Altima with maybe even some Nissan Leaf mixed in. This particular one that I'm showing you here is actually the mid trim. This is the SV trim. It's around $17,000. This car in general starts at around $14,000, so one of the least expensive new cars you can buy. As you can see with the SV, you have just halogen headlights. If you were looking for LED headlights, you have to go for the SR. Keep in mind, the Versa, neither the Versa nor the Kicks offers daytime running lights. For some reason, Nissan doesn't put daytime running lights on this vehicle. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm sure they're gonna add that in the next coming years, but the SV, as you can see, has no fog lights. It looks a little bit more plain without the LED headlights that you get on the SR trim. Now, in contrast with the Kicks I think actually looks pretty attractive. In fact, as Nissan's smallest crossover, they really gave this car a lot of style, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's going to stand out in a very good way. This particular one I'm showing you is the SR trim. It's around $21,000 plus a premium package, so you're like around $23,000, which does sound a lot more than the Versa, but keep in mind that Versa is the SV. That can be about $21,000 if you guys get a fully loaded model. Now, as you can see with the SR, you have LED headlights. They are just LED low beam headlights. You have an incandescent turn signal, and then again, no daytime running lights, LED or halogen whatsoever. You do have halogen fog lights at the lower fascia, and honestly, I think the Kicks actually looks better from the front fascia. I think that Nissan did a really good job with the overall design. I like the fact that they offer two different roof colors on the Kicks, where you can get this black roof, or you can get body colored, or you can get a white roof. So I guess basically three different roof colors. Now, economy cars are often plagued with really ugly looking rims, and thankfully Nissan has kind of addressed that. You can get your pick between up to a 15 to a 17-inch wheel. Let's start with the Versa. These are the 16-inch wheels that you get on the SV trim. They're wrapped in 205/55 series tires. Keep in mind the SR will have a 17-inch wheel. Since this is an economy car, you just have rear drum brakes at the back, disc at the front. Of course, it's going to come with anti-lock brakes. Now, the Kicks has the 17-inch wheel that you can also get on the Versa. If you guys go for the SR trim like this, they're wrapped in 205/55 series tires, so a little bit less or thinner sidewall. But it looks good, especially with the black, inner painted spokes, with this orange color, with the black mirrors. I think that the Kicks honestly is probably the better looking vehicle. I especially love it with the silver roof rails. Again, I don't particularly love crossovers, but I think Nissan did a really good job with the Kicks. Now, surprisingly, between these two vehicles, you're probably wondering which one is actually the bigger one. It looks like the Kicks, right? It's actually the Versa. The Versa is about 8 inches longer overall. They both share the same 103-inch long wheelbase. This is 177 inches long, while this is 169 inches long. Now, the Kicks is about an inch wider, and it's about 5 inches taller, again, because this is supposed to be a crossover. But this is a sedan, this is a crossover. Follow me over to the rear and let's show you guys the differences there. So looking at the rear of these vehicles, I kind of think of the Kicks as the replacement for the old Versa Note hatchback. Even though this is a crossover, it's really more like a Versa hatchback, because remember, this only comes as a sedan for 2020. Let me first show you the trunk capacity of this. This has no outside trunk release on the SV trim. I think the SR trim has the trunk release, so instead you have to use the key fob to open up the trunk. Nissan says you get around 15.1 cubic feet of space. Now this is one of the largest trunks in the segment. As you can see, it's very usable. The seats fold down 60/40, and then there's actually a temporary spare tire back there, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat kit. Overall, the design of the Versa I think actually looks better than the Kicks. Both cars have just an all-incandescent taillight assembly. Nissan's been kind of guilty of cheapening out there a little bit. Surprisingly, the SV actually has these integrated parking sensors. There's some fake carbon fiber in a rear diffuser. I thought that was reserved for the SR, but clearly it's on the SV. The SR does give you a rear spoiler, which does make it look a little bit more handsome. This, again, looks more attractive to me. It looks like an Altima. Now, in contrast to the Kicks at the rear, I don't love the design of the Kicks. I really hate this black plastic here. I think it looks cheap, it looks unfinished. Nissan should have just made this all body colored. They're trying to make it look more rugged. You have an all incandescent design for the taillights, and then, again, no visible exhaust tips, just like the Versa. So this is always going to be a subjective thing, but personally I like the look of the Versa more. Now obviously, because the Kicks is a hatchback, a crossover, you're going to get more space. Now with the seats up, Nissan says you get around 25 cubic feet of cargo space. That is 10 more than what you're going to get in the Versa, which is why people in America find these crossovers so appealing. Fold down those rear seats and you get around 32 cubic feet of space, which if you're comparing it to something like the HR-V, the Kicks has roughly half the capacity of the HR-V. Now underneath the floor here, Nissan still gives you a temporary spare tire as well, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat kit. So moving on to the interior, let me first start off with the all-new Versa. Now I actually just drove this car last month in Nashville, but I showed you guys the SR trim. This is the SV trim, as you can see, with the light tan color interior with the two-tone. I think it actually looks pretty good. Now this one does come with the Nissan Intelligent Access key. Just put your foot on the brake, and then it'll start right up for you. All Versas will actually come with push button start. The SV includes the intelligent access part, so you can just kind of remotely, or just have the key in your pocket and it'll unlock the car for you. Now, first thing I want to talk about, the door slam. The Versa actually has a relatively solid sounding door slam, especially for this price point. Now, since this one isn't the fully loaded SR trim, I expected it to be a lot more basic in here, and it's actually not. I'm very surprised to see that you have the same 7-inch Nissan Connect head unit here. You can see it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. No embedded navigation system, which is a bad thing usually, but because it has Apple CarPlay, you can see you've got the Waze integration or you've got Google Maps. So the fact that it doesn't have embedded navigation is not a big deal. As an economy car that's inexpensive, it's actually really nice in here. You can see you've got the same leatherette material on the dashboard here. It is genuine stitching on this portion here. Everything else here is hard touch plastic, but that's okay. It's excusable for me because this is an inexpensive car. The steering wheel is not leather wrapped in the SV trim, which usually annoys me, but the urethane material they use actually doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel cheap. You still have that flat bottom design. Of course, I still prefer the leather that you get on the SR, but this isn't bad if you guys, decide to get the SV trim. The door panels are all hard touch plastic, and you have a one-touch up and down driver's side window only, which is fine. The steering wheel also tilts and telescopes, which is good. You have kind of a 6-way adjustment for the seats. You can also adjust the height. The one thing I don't like about the Versa and the Kicks is the fact that you only just get one little armrest here on the driver's side, and I also found that the armrest at times doesn't go down far enough. Like, I have the recline adjusted a little bit further back, and this armrest is still too high, so I think Nissan needs to make that adjustment, or at least just give us a freaking center console. I mean, would it really cost that much for them to add a center console? Now, over here in the center stack, you can see the SV just has a single zone manual climate control. You do have a backup camera when you put it into reverse. You have trajectory as well. It's a decent backup camera with parking sensors. The Kicks offers a 360-degree around view monitor. You cannot get that on the Versa, which could be a problem for some. If you're also looking for premium audio system, the Bose sound system that's on the Kicks isn't available on the Versa, but surprisingly, the Versa offers adaptive cruise control. If you guys want adaptive intelligent cruise control, it is available on the SR trim as part of a premium package, unavailable on the Kicks. This car also has the Nissan Safety Shield 360, so you get automatic emergency braking and lane departure alert as standard. The blind spot, however, is optional. It's included on this specific trim. The glove compartment as well, you can see it's actually a pretty good size. It's not damped or lined with felt, which I kind of expected. So overall, the cabin of this car is definitely no longer a penalty box compared to like my first new car, a 2012 Fit. The fact that it has this big screen with Android Auto and CarPlay and Bluetooth is a huge improvement. So it's kind of showing you where car technology is going. So getting into the 2019 Nissan Kicks, you can see the overall design is very similar to the Versa, which technically this car came out first, so it looks like the Nissan design team took what they learned from the Kicks and kind of applied it over to the Versa. This is the SR trim, and it has the leatherette material with the contrasting stitching. You cannot get leatherette in the Versa. You're only stuck with cloth seats. Now this one also has the push-button start, intelligent access key. The start button is actually in the same spot as the Versa right here by the shifter, and this trim also gives you remote start, which is definitely a nice addition. You can also get remote start, keep in mind, on the Versa, it's just not on that SV trim. Now, looking at the rest of this interior, you can see you've got the 7-inch display, the Nissan Connect head unit here. It also does include Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so that's really nice. Embedded navigation is not available on this car, which is fine because you have the Apple CarPlay integration with Google Maps and whatnot. Now, looking at the materials, same soft touch leatherette material with the actual genuine stitching here on this part of the dash. It's all hard touch plastic over here, same material that's in the Versa. The door panels also are hard touch plastic, but I will say they feel a little bit more hollower and cheaper versus the Versa. The door, it sounds the same as the Versa, so has a relatively solid thunk to it, which is good because this car also starts at around $18,000. The windows here, they're one touch up and down for the driver and the passenger side. Now, I believe the Versa SR has the same thing, but because that's an SV, it only has just one touch on the driver side. The steering wheel also, as you can see, it tilts and telescopes. It's got that leather-wrapped wheel, which is really nice with the contrasting stitching. This car, as I said, does not offer adaptive cruise control, so you have a bunch of empty buttons here. I'm imagining Nissan will probably rectify that in 2020, but we'll have to wait and see. One thing about this car, when you put it into reverse, look at this, you've got a 360 camera, so I think that's a really nice option. You typically don't find something like that in this segment of vehicle. Remember the price point. You can see here it's got just a single zone automatic climate control. It has 2 level heated seats. Sorry, there's no cooled seats. Everything's to a price point. Over here in the center console, the storage is practically the same. You've got a traditional pull handbrake over here. You've got 2 USB ports over there. And then the seats also, they have the same armrest over here, the single armrest, which I don't think comes down far enough. Now, I do want to touch base on the seats because I noticed on both cars, the seats on the driver's side is a little bit more comfortable. This seat, when you first sit in it, is super hard. It's like sitting on a rock, which is funny because Nissan says both of these cars use their zero gravity memory foam, but it's almost like they didn't put it on the passenger side because I found that the seat is very hard when you first sit in it. Now, the glove compartment, you can see it's practically the same size as the Versa. It's not damped or lined with felt. And I'm sorry to report, if you guys are looking for a sunroof, it is not available on either of these cars. So the previous generation Versa was very popular with taxis, with Uber drivers, because it had a gigantic back seat. And for this new generation, you can see Nissan says that they've preserved the roominess of the previous generation, but if you look at the numbers, this car has significantly less legroom. You're looking at around 33 inches of legroom. The old one had like 37 inches of legroom, but even though the numbers don't really show it justice, this actually has a good amount of space. The floor is almost completely flat. I can basically sit with my legs crossed back here. I have plenty of headroom at 5'7". So you can definitely still use this as a family car, which is important because that's what a lot of people bought Versas for. But let's hop into the backseat of the Kicks and see how that compares. So in contrast, the backseat of the Kicks, Nissan says there's actually more space back here at around 34 inches of legroom. To me, I feel like the Versa has a little bit more space. I mean, sitting back here, there's still a good amount of room. It feels like there's not quite as much actual space when I have the seat basically in the same position. There is a good amount of headroom back here. I also like the Primatex leatherette material. There's no center armrest here, just like on the Versa, but surprisingly, I do feel that the Versa feels a little bit more roomy in the real world when you're comparing the two cars back to back. So because these two cars ride on the same platform, they actually share the same exact engine, which makes my job easy. It's Nissan's corporate 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine. It actually doesn't even have direct injection, it's just port injected. It's a very simple, very proven engine that they've been using in other parts of the world for years. In both cars, they got upgraded when they introduced this engine in the US, 122 horsepower and 114 pound-feet of torque. That is not much power, but because these two cars are so small, they also don't weigh very much. This Versa here weighs around 2,500 pounds. The Kicks, surprisingly, even though it's a crossover, only weighs about 100 pounds more at 2,600 pounds. If this one was an SR, the Versa is actually the heavier one at 2,700 pounds, which just perplexes me, but this car is also 7 inches longer. Now, it all goes out through a choice of transmissions. On the Kicks, it's only their Xtronic CVT. Now, Nissan says it's their latest generation CVT. It delivers a 12% improvement in ratio spread. It improves the fuel economy, it improves the acceleration. It's the same CVT that's in the Versa, but you can also get this car with a 5-speed manual if you guys go for the base S trim, which Nissan expects to be a very small take rate because most people nowadays drive an automatic. Now, both of these cars are also front-wheel drive. They do not offer all-wheel drive on the Kicks, which I think they should. And fuel economy is also interesting because they're pretty good for fuel economy. This is rated at 32 in the city, 40 on the highway, so about 35 combined. The Kicks is not far behind though. This is rated at 31 in the city and 36 on the highway. So it's limited basically by the aerodynamics since both of these cars weigh about the same. I'm gonna basically go over which one of the, or how these two drives or the differences between the two. Nissan says you'll get to 60 in around the 10.5 second mark. So let's get out on the road with both these cars and see how each of them perform. So getting an opportunity to drive both the Kicks and the Versa back to back will really show you just how similar both of these two vehicles are. I mean, yes, one is a sedan and one is a crossover, but they both ride on the same Nissan V platform. They have the same 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine with the latest generation Xtronic CVT. Now the Versa, let's first start with this one, has an available 5-speed manual if you guys go for the base trim. Nissan unfortunately doesn't have that manual here. Otherwise I would love to show you guys what that would be like to drive. But regardless, this car is front wheel drive. It's got a semi-independent twist beam suspension in the back, drum brakes at the back. This is very much a basic transportation kind of car. And it really reminds you of that when you get it out on the road and put your foot down. It does have a sport mode in the transmission selector. It's buried right behind the shifter over here, and then it puts an S right there next to the D. When you put it in sport mode, I mean, the engine in this car is so buzzy, it just makes me not want to put my foot down at all in it. Thankfully, the CVT is responsive. Nissan's been doing a CVT for quite some time, and it does do a good job at putting the engine right in the meat of its power band. And it's very snappy as well. It'll, snap between different ratios whenever you're calling for more power, which is important because this car is just a damn dog. It is very slow. It feels like it gets to 60 in around the 11.5 or maybe 11 second mark. It is very much a sluggish car that will constantly remind you that this is an entry-level car. Remember, entry-level cars in general have very, modest horsepower levels, modest torque. They're not really all about refinement, and they're more about just being good value for money. Now, another aspect that's beneficial for small cars is just how easy they are to drive. I mean, the Versa, like every other subcompact car, has a really tight turning radius. It's very nimble, it's very small. You can fit it around tight parking lots, get it through tight areas. And honestly, Versas have never been a handling kind of vehicle, but the new generation definitely has been improved markedly. The steering is electric, and it actually has a decent amount of feedback and play. The suspension is very soft, but really, you just find yourself not wanting to go put your foot down in this thing because it's a very buzzy engine. It just sounds like you're thrashing it. We'll get into the Kicks later on. We'll see if there's any difference, but I doubt it because it's the same engine. Ride quality also is a concern. This car actually has a little bit of a bumpy ride quality, and you do hear the suspension crash over the bumps and whatnot. There's a fair bit of road noise. I did drive this out on the highway, but I mean, really, subcompact cars have never been great for long distance travel. The newer generation ones have gotten better. The seats also on the driver's side is relatively comfortable. The armrest is just too high. I want it to adjust lower, but on the passenger side, I found that the seat was extremely heavy, which was really strange. But thankfully, visibility in here is also very good. You can see out of it well. This car does have one safety feature that the Kicks does not offer, and that's lane departure alert. You can't get that on the Kicks for some reason. You can get forward emergency braking. That is standard on both cars, but if you want adaptive cruise control, again, you have to get the Versa as opposed to the Kicks, which I'm imagining Nissan will probably address that issue for the 2020 model year. So overall, the Versa is a decent driving subcompact, a huge improvement over the previous generation, but it really shows that Nissan used market research, and they realized that Generation Z younger buyers don't really notice NVH quite as much. I mean, myself, I fall under the millennial category, and I guess when I first bought my Honda Fit when I was 22, 23 years old, I noticed that it was buzzy and loud, but I guess it didn't really bother me quite as much. And nowadays, I don't want my car to actually do that, which is why Nissan wants to bring in these younger buyers early and then progressively move them up the corporate ladder. So let's hop into the Kicks because I want to see just how different the Kicks feels in relationship to the Versa. So first, getting into the Nissan Kicks after getting out of the Versa, you definitely notice this vehicle is taller than the Versa. I mean, it's got a 5 inches higher in the height, means you have more headroom in this vehicle. At 5'7", I can definitely feel the spaciousness. The interior in general just feels more roomy, which is probably why a lot of people end up choosing a crossover. But honestly, why couldn't they just make this a hatchback? Why? Couldn't they? Because it's America, and Americans are so in love with crossovers. Now, in terms of refinement, this car has the same identical feel to the Versa. They have the same suspension setup. So it's McPherson strut up front, it's the torsion beam semi-independent in the back. Both of these vehicles ride a little choppy. I mean, they're not uncomfortable, but they definitely are a lot choppier than some people are used to, especially if you guys are coming out of like a compact or a mid-size car. These just feel a little bit more bumpier than you're used to. The engine in this car, it's also extremely buzzy. I don't like pushing the engine in this car, just like in the Versa, because it's just a very, very buzzy engine. So it's just not very, exciting to do it. Now, the one thing about Miami that I'm noticing, there are absolutely no driving roads here. It's absolutely terrible in terms of trying to find some actual driving roads. Let me shut the GPS off because the lady keeps talking. So bear with me as I try to find an actual route. Mostly I'm just kind of driving around the city, which is fine because these cars are very much city type of vehicles. They're urban vehicles, so you're not going to be really driving these things on your favorite back road. And they're so small because, they're great for driving in the city, and that's the main purpose of these vehicles. The Kicks also feels like it gets to 60 and around the near 10-second mark. Honestly, the two cars feel identical. You start turning the wheel of the Kicks, and this thing has a quick ratio steering, so it's a lot more energetic than I thought it would be. The suspension has the same kind of softness in here, so there's some body lean and whatnot. But again, the Kicks is fun, and the Kicks and Versa are fun in ways that, driving a slow car hard or driving a slow car fast makes it. I mean, the thing is you can kind of flog these things. You can, floor them all the time, and they don't use too much gas. You're not going to be speeding because these things are so sluggish. But trying to navigate through tight parking areas, that's always kind of fun if you guys don't particularly like driving big vehicles or you're just constantly driving the city. So I can see the appeal of this type of vehicle, but really what impresses me is just how much more spacious the Kicks feels on the inside, just because it's 5 inches taller. The cargo area, again, is much larger. The back seat, surprisingly, the Versa was bigger, but unlike the Versa, this car isn't available, with adaptive cruise control. It's not available with lane departure alert. This does have the blind spot monitoring, but that's kind of a quick fix for Nissan to do for the 2020 model year. The seat comfort compared to the Versa, I am noticing the seat, because this is the Premium text, feels a little bit softer, but that's not really fair because this is a leather material. And the one feature that I love about the Kicks is the premium Bose sound system in this car, which honestly, Bose audio systems have always left me feeling a little bit like there's something to be desired. This one actually sounds pretty decent for the price. It's got 8 speakers. I couldn't find the wattage, but if you want a premium sound system, again, it's not available on the Versa, which for me, for younger buyers, I think it makes the Kicks slightly more desirable than the Versa. Just because of the 360 camera, the more unique look on the exterior, the increased cargo space, and the premium Bose sound system. So in order for me to get access to both of these cars, I'm in Miami, Florida at this event that Nissan calls Life at 20. And part of the event is where they took us to Miami-Dade Community College, and they talked about Generation Z and what was really important to that generation in terms of features, in terms of technology. And not surprisingly, voice commands and driver assistance and infotainment technology, or phone connectivity were the top priorities for Generation Z. So it's pretty easy to see why Nissan focused on that for the Kicks and for the Versa. These two vehicles have probably some of the best infotainment systems in the entry-level subcompact segment. I mean, the 7-inch screen is standard. You just have to buy an SV trim and up on both to get the Apple CarPlay and the Android Auto, and then a backup camera is standard. I will say that the Kicks has the 360 camera, which does make it more appealing. And really, choosing between these two, if you have under $20,000 to spend, is going to come down to what your personal wants and needs are. Personally, I think I like the look of the Versa more. I'm more of a traditional sedan guy. I especially like it in the SR trim with the sportier looks, the wheels and tires, the rear spoiler on the back, the interior with the orange accents. But you also can't deny the fact that the Kicks offers a lot of what the Versa has, with more space in the trunk. There are certain angles of this car that look better. I think from the rear, it's probably the worst angle. This car looks much better from the front. And even though I was annoyed that Nissan didn't offer all-wheel drive on this car when it first launched last year, I think it's kind of a smart decision on their part. It helped keep the cost of this vehicle down, which when you look at the cost, both of these vehicles are extremely inexpensive to buy. This car starts at around $14,700. This car is $4,000 more at $18,790. This is roughly a few $1,000s less expensive than most of the competition. This is priced along the lines of a Kia Soul, but on the higher end, the Soul is going to be much more expensive. Now keep in mind, this one here, the SR with the premium package, the one option that I wish Nissan would add is adaptive cruise control, which they'll probably add for 2020. At $23,000 including destination, this is an insane value for what you get. Versus this Versa here, this SV trim is around $17,000, but keep in mind, if you guys want the SR trim, which includes the LED headlights, the bigger wheels and tires, the heated seats, in the front, the spoiler on the back, for about 19 grand. I probably would say just get the SR trim as opposed to the SV. But really for me, I'm probably gonna end up picking the Kicks as the better option to buy, simply because for a couple $1,000s more, you get a car that is much more practical, that's a little bit more stylish. It stands out a little bit more versus the Versa, but it's really gonna, again, come down to your personal needs and wants. Now, of course, both of these cars are not perfect. And what really annoys me about both of them is the fact that the engines are extremely buzzy, but Nissan says that in their market research, Generation Z really doesn't care about noise, vibration, harshness. So that's probably why they decided to invest more into the infotainment system as opposed to the engine, which is perfectly fine, gets good gas mileage, but it constantly reminds you that these are economy cars at their roots. Now, because I'm on this short program, I'm not gonna be able to give these two an RPM rating just because I literally only had the cars for about an hour and there's a thunderstorm that's about to start coming down on us. Remember, this is Miami, Florida. So whenever I get these cars back home in DC for a week, I'll do an RPM rating to kind of do a follow-up video. But overall, if you guys are in the market for a sub $20,000 car, the Nissan Versa and the Nissan Kicks are really enticing options, and Nissan did it right in terms of the entry-level buyer and delivering the features that a younger buyer wants. So with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview between the 2020 Nissan Versa and the 2019 Nissan Kicks. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video. Prices, which is why I'm standing by two. Sorry. All right, what am I doing?
Don't come forward until I start to back off. I want you back by that wheel.
Oh, so don't move.
You're so far forward that I can barely even get to the doors right now.
So don't move. Prices, which is why I'm in Miami Beach with. Sorry, I'm in Miami. I didn't mean to say beach.
Which is why.
Which is why I'm in Miami, Florida, with two of the newest entry-level subcompact cars on the market. Sorry. Hopefully, Nissan saw that. Sorry. Thank with the 2020 Nissan Versa and the 2019 Nissan Kicks. And the biggest question I want answered. Sorry.
Where were you when I started?
The 2020 Nissan Versa and the 2019 Nissan Juke. And to test out which
Nissan what?
Did I say Juke? Sorry, Juke. Did I say Juke? I did say Juke. Kicks.